Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and we got another great one for you today. Today, we're actually connecting with my first hunting buddy. He's been on the podcast before, Stephen Bryant. He was part of my kind of homage to my late father-in-law, and I knew that he had a bunch more hunting stories, and I wanted to make sure we got him on the podcast for a solo episode at some point. So I want to say thank you to Stephen for coming on the podcast. It's great catching up with him. Hopefully we get into the woods this September. To listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. Please share the podcast with one person so that, more people are reaching out with some great stories to tell. Beyond that, guys, like, share, listen. Thank you very much for tuning in. Now let's let Stephen tell you some of his stories. Thank you. All right, Stephen, welcome again to the Hunting Stories podcast, brother. How are you?
Thanks, man. Yeah, good. Good to see you and good to be on here again.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And for those who don't know Stephen, if you listen to it's actually my favorite episode, but it's kind of our homage to Larry Peterson, my father-in-law. We all got together with Dylan, my brother-in-law, and told our favorite Larry stories, who passed away about a year and a half ago. But Stephen, you're the man really who got me into hunting. I've been out, even though I've been hunting plenty at this point, I've been more days with you than I have anyone else. And you and I haven't really hunted together in years.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, man, I learned a lot from you. I think once I dove really head first into this thing and got a little too into it, I've taught you a thing or two at this point. Hopefully you still have that wind checker.
I've learned a lot from you as well. So it's been a good, good relationship.
Yeah, sure. Man. Yeah. But just for those who haven't listened to that episode, and if you haven't, go back and do it at some point because it's one of my favorites, and I got a lot of great feedback from that episode. But Stephen, why don't you introduce yourself so that people know who they're hearing stories from today?
Yeah, I'm Stephen Bryant, born and raised in Austin, Texas. Moved to Seattle 18, 19 years ago, something like that. And I've been grew up hunting whitetails in Texas, and then been hunting, and dove and all the other things that you can hunt in Texas, and then moved up here and started hunting elk, and then just recently got into pheasant and actually going goose hunting tomorrow. So I'll tell a little bit of that story.
Perfect, man. Yeah, and beyond that, you're a jack of all trades. You just I always thought that you had to make everything at hunting camp, because we'd show up to hunting camp and Steven's like, well, today we're going to build a shitter. And we spend 4 hours chopping wood to get a path back to set up a compost toilet somewhere, or, building a rack for the back of your truck or whatever it is, man. You're an impressive guy. I'm glad I know you. I wish we didn't live so far apart anymore, but who knows? Maybe we'll get back into the woods this year.
Yeah, man. That'd be great.
That would be great.
Yeah.
All right, let's kick this thing off. I want to hear a story. I don't think you even mentioned it, and I've told it briefly, but I don't know all the details. I want the story of when your tent burned down.
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's start with that one.
Yeah, so Dylan and I, and what I was going to say a minute ago is Dylan. So Michael is Dylan's brother-in-law, and I grew up and went to high school with Dylan, and so that's how we know each other. Anyways, I think that's part of that episode, but yeah. So Dylan and I were hunting, and we had picked a spot, and we set up our big canvas hunting tent.
We might as well tell people why you picked that spot too, because I think that's a pretty funny story as well.
Yeah, there's every time we'd ever gone into that hunting spot, you mean just originally why we got?
Yeah, originally, why did you hunt that particular spot? Okay, why was that your camp? Because that's, in my opinion, one of the funniest things someone's ever done.
Yeah, so Dylan and I both were putting in for our elk hunt, or our elk tags, and we didn't realize it, but we put in for two different units. And Dylan actually put in for the wrong unit. I put in for the right unit.
Unless you're Dylan.
Put in for the tandem unit. And I put in for Menashtash, and we and so when we went out to go hunting that year, we're like, well, I mean, we've got to both use our tags, and we both drew doe tags, by the way, or sorry, cow tags. In those units, right? So I had a cow tag for Menashtash, he had a cow tag for tandem, and we decided we were just gonna find a camp spot on the road that's between those two units, and he would hunt on one side of the road and I would hunt on the other side. And so we did that, and we were actually camping in the tandem unit, and I would walk across the road and walk into to my unit, and I ended up walking way up on this hill, and while I was up there, I bumped a spike, and it was the first elk that we had seen in that general vicinity. Dylan had been hunting for 2 days on his unit, and I was hunting 2 days in mine, and the second day I bumped a spike. And so then we decided that we were going to hunt that area where I saw that spike, and we were both going to hunt it. And so he came over and was hunting my side, and is like, if I see a spike, I'll shoot it. If you see it, either you can shoot it. And we were hunting there, and that's when we two elk came walking up the road right in front of Dylan. Dylan shot the spike, and then the cow ran right into my area, and I shot it. So within an hour, we both had an elk on the ground. And it was, it was an evening hunt, so it was starting to get dark. And then we had to clean 2 full elk, and we came down in the middle of the night with these. We came down in the middle of the night, completely tired from cleaning these elk, and we just left them in the woods. And we were so worried that something was going to eat all of our elk. And we got back up there the next day, and there was nothing taken off of it. But then we had the hard task of carrying 2 elk down a mile. The distance was about a mile, and the elevation was about 1,000 feet, which is pretty steep for carrying elk quarters out. So
I've taken that hike. Yeah. I don't like it.
yeah, it's a tough one. You've been up and down it many times. And, it was a great hunting spot, and so we ended up choosing that spot, and we hunted there for maybe 5 years in a row. And that was we hunted that area on your first hunt.
Yeah, my first hunt, but no one saw anything that year. It was I think my second year that we got that bull. But yeah, let's go back to the tent. That was the year before, or maybe 2 years before.
We found a really good spot on the road. And generally when we'd gone in there had been someone else in that camp. And so we came early this year and no one was in it. So we picked the best camp spot. It was right on the river, in a short distance to like walk down and then walk over a bridge to get into the unit and get into the hunting area. Right before you start going straight uphill. Yeah. And so we were camped in that spot, and I can't remember. I think we had 1 day left. We were going to hunt the next day, so we were probably 4 days in or whatever. And we had been down to camp for lunch, but we didn't make a fire. We hadn't had a fire. In the tent had a potbelly stove that we had used the night before, so there was a fire in the tent. But when we left that morning, we made a little fire to make breakfast, and then there hadn't been a fire in there all day. And we went up, hunted, came down and ate lunch, and then went back up in the afternoon. And while we're hunting in the afternoon, we just start hearing, it sounds like someone is in a shooting range, just firing off rounds like they've got machine guns, fully automatic guns, and they're just blasting off. And then we're hearing these big cannon bursts that sound like a cannon's going off. It's like boom, and then and we're like, what the hell is someone doing? This is hunting season. Why are they just blasting off rounds? Hunt the rest of our hunt, and then walk back out. It's dark in the middle of the night, and we walk back into our camp, and it's just flat and black, and everything is burned to the ground. And we realized that like all that shooting was all the ammunition we had in the tent all going off. And then the big cannon bursts were like the propane canisters going off. So it's like just nuts. And still to this day, we don't know what caused the fire. We, like I said, we didn't have a fire at lunch. And when we were down there at lunch, it wasn't obviously burning. And so, and the camp stove, the stove inside the tent was cold. And we kind of think that someone might have burned it. But that's just speculation. I mean,
wasn't it like, and this I wasn't there, so I'm just going off what you guys told me. But wasn't like the only part of the tent that was intact, because the rest of it completely burned down. When we're talking wall tent that's like treated to not burn, to not mildew, like got all sorts of treatment, meant to be out there, meant to not catch on fire. The only part that wasn't burnt was like the corner near the stove. Everything else was toasted.
No, that's a good point. It was like there's ground. So where we put the stove, there was just bare ground, and everywhere else was a tarp on the ground. And there was like no burn spots underneath the stove. And to your point, the stove would generally like shoot sparks off the top, and they would land on the tent, and that wasn't a problem. Because it was fire resistant. So that was our guess. I mean, maybe the lantern fell off of its hook. I mean, it was tied on a piece of paracord, so it's unlikely that would have broken, but maybe that fell and caused a spark or something. It wasn't on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was just like this weird story of like, how did the tent burn down? We've thought about it a lot and can't come up with anything other than someone likely burned it down.
Yeah. But maybe it was Larry, because Larry hated that tent. Wasn't that the like dark green
no,
army tent?
no, this was a white one that Dylan had bought, and it was
Oh, okay.
it was similar to the one that you hunted in. We bought another one, so it was after the big green hunting tent.
Okay. Okay. Maybe it wasn't
it was
Larry
a
then.
legit
All right.
white-walled one. And then like a couple of other cool things about that story is, number one is I had a 357 Ruger pistol that was in the fire. And I sent it into Ruger to see if there was anything that they could do to fix it. I figured it had gotten warped or whatever, and they just sent me a brand new one, which is really cool of Ruger to do. And then another thing is the Yeti cooler that we had. It was still melted into a puddle, but when you flipped off the lid, there was still ice under the lid.
No shit.
Which is kind of crazy.
That is so crazy, especially considering it like melted your gun a little bit. Like it's melting metal, but the ice was still intact inside of the Yeti. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Yeti was over near where the rest of the stuff burned pretty good, so it was kind of wild.
That's crazy, man. Well, thanks for going into that story. I love that story. I tell it occasionally. I think I've maybe mentioned it on the podcast once or twice, but it's crazy to think about it. I know that you guys said that you think there was like a truck kind of floating around and stuff like that, and that's what leads you to think that maybe it was an arsonist. But who knows?
That's right. So yeah, when we were walking into our hunting spot that day, we saw a truck pull up and kind of pull off to the side of the road, and it like watched us walk all the way into our hunting spot. And then we were kind of suspicious of it. So once we got like into the woods where they couldn't see us anymore, we kind of looped back around and kept an eye on them. And within minutes of us getting out of sight of them, they turned around and drove back towards our camp. Now, they could have been doing anything. But yeah, that was our speculation. Yeah, and we did not get an elk that year, which was another sad part of that story. And actually, like I said, we had another day left that we were going to hunt, and we were just so distraught. And obviously, we couldn't sleep there again because all of our sleeping bags and everything burned up. So we just kind of like slowly threw all the burned stuff in the back of my truck and just drove home. It was a rough drive home.
I bet, man. I bet. All right, that was the request. What else you got for us?
I thought I'd kind of start with like how I got into hunting.
Perfect. Let's do it.
My dad and my family weren't really into hunting, so I wasn't kind of born into it. And when I was in my early teens, I had some neighbors and some very close friends that they grew up hunting, and I was always super interested in it. And so at some point, one of them loaned me a recurve bow, and I just learned how to shoot it by shooting into hay bales. And I just got I was super into it. I was super stoked about it. And so I got pretty good at shooting the bow. And then I went and notched out a cedar tree so that I could wedge myself into the cedar tree and see out. And then I put some corn out there.
That sounds like you, even little teenage you, hollowing out a tree to make yourself a tree stand.
Yeah, and it was on someone's land that just had land near my house. So I would just walk down there. And I had all this really inexpensive camo that I'd bought from the Academy Sports and Outdoors or whatever. And I'd stuff it into trash bags with a bunch of cedar so they would smell like cedar when I went out there. And I mean, it actually worked. I did actually have a deer come into my view, but obviously when I tried to pull the bow back, the tree shook and the deer ran off. So I didn't actually get anything, but it was just cool. It was such a rad experience to have an animal that close to me.
Yeah.
That was it for me. I was in from then on, and I always tried to find people that would take me hunting. And soon after that is when I met Boomer, a friend of mine, and he has a ranch in West Texas, and he started taking me out there. And from then on, I kind of got to hunt in West Texas with him almost any time that I wanted, all the way until I moved here.
Does his family still have that ranch?
Such a rad spot, such a cool ranch. So rad to be a part of it.
Do they still have that ranch?
They do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just talking to Boomer the other day. He was telling me that the windstorm that came through there ripped a ton of oak trees out, twisted them off at the base and just threw them. So he said it's pretty rough looking out there currently. Jeez. But they've been doing a really good job for a really long time. Since I was in my teens, we've been feeding corn out there, and then they started feeding protein, and so they're building some pretty good deer out there.
Nice. Do they got any
It's
other
awesome.
of that random West Texas critters like Aoudad and whatever else roams around out there? I've even heard there's elk out there. Actually, I know a dude who shot like a 350-inch elk in West Texas.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I don't think he's not far enough west. He's in the what area is he in? Like Menard, Texas is really close to where his ranch is.
Okay.
And so, but yeah, when I was hunting there, there wasn't even hogs there yet. Now they're starting to get a few hogs into the area, but it was just whitetails pretty much, and turkey. We got some turkey here and there, and there's decent dove hunting out there.
Gotcha.
They were really strict though about the deer hunting, so we almost barely dove hunted because they didn't want guns being shot that close to deer season. we did a little bit, but just not as much as we would have otherwise. Which I really liked about their strategy of like just really being conservative about like their deer, and there's rules about what we could and couldn't shoot. Not like we were culling them out, but just you couldn't shoot anything below an 8-point. It was just a really cool thing to be a part of, and where I learned most of the hunting that I know how to do. That was almost all rifle hunting. We did get into bow hunting towards the end, but it was that's just I learned so much about hunting.
Yeah, man. Did anyone else in your family pick it up after you kind of got the itch, or was it still just you and your brothers don't hunt? Your dad's still not into it?
My brother, both my brothers got into it a little bit, and in fact, my younger brother just signed a lease like earlier, maybe last week. He was calling me, telling me that him and a few of his buddies were getting on a lease.
Awesome.
In South Texas.
Hell yeah, there's some good deer down in South Texas.
Yeah, and they found a piece of land that no one had ever hunted on, or it hadn't been like leased for hunting, and the owner of it, I think it was sold, and the new owner wanted to, lease it out. And so like there's no hunting lanes, no stands have ever been on it, none of that stuff. And so they're kind of like starting from scratch, which is cool.
Yeah, that'll be a fun experience. Hopefully there's some good deer on there. Hopefully there's some dumb deer that haven't really been pressured.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, I don't know. Did I cut you short on kind of what got you started hunting there? Starting asking questions?
No, that's it.
More?
I mean, just kind of went from there, and then moved up here, and Dylan was super excited about going elk hunting, and so was I. And so we went on our first elk hunting trip within a couple of months of when I moved here.
Yeah.
And and so that was such a rad experience.
Was your first trip the one where you guys ended up like the burn ban, and then you had to go buy all the blankets from the? Was that your first year, or was that later on?
That was maybe year 4 or 5.
Okay.
Yeah, the first year we didn't really know what to expect, and we were rifle hunting, and so we had gone out and done a lot of scouting. We had all these really cool areas picked out, and then on opening morning we were down at the bottom of the road, and we hiked all the way up the road in the dark and got there just before daylight. We were kind of getting into our little fields, and then trucks would just drive right up the road, park right behind us, get out of their trucks and slam the doors and walk in right where we were. And we're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Maybe we weren't as secluded as we thought we were. And then like I always tell this as part of the story, but like it started to get light, and you're looking out over the field that you'd chosen, and you just see it looks like a pumpkin patch, because you just see all the other hunters sitting down there, and you're like, God damn it, this isn't going to work, Yeah. And so we then had to start looking at places that were harder to get to, and that's how we learned that like if there is a road, someone's going to drive that road and get out, right? So just you got to be as far away from a road as you're willing to hike, and that's how we started changing our strategy.
Yeah, you also that's what pivoted you from rifles, right? After that pumpkin patch to muzzleloaders.
Yep, absolutely, yeah. Switched to muzzleloader. We both.
Here's a funny story. You want to tell a story about that one time we were sighting in our muzzleloaders, and your gun shot real hard one time?
Yeah. I shot it once, and it kicked the shit out of me. And I'm like, God damn, what happened? And I started looking around, and I realized that I had left the stick in the barrel.
The ramrod.
The ramrod. And I'm surprised that I didn't get hurt, or you or anyone else that was near me. I'm surprised it didn't blow the barrel up.
Yeah, we were just sitting there shooting, and all of a sudden you were like, oh, God damn, what the hell was that? Like out of the blue. And I don't think you realized it for a few minutes until you realized it was gone. And I remember you being like, okay, here's the plan. We're going to walk down to our targets, and you just keep looking for that ramrod. It might be speared into the ground somewhere. Don't give it away. They'll kick us out. We were trying to find it on our way down there.
100%. Yeah, the next C Spire, we're gonna walk normal, but we're gonna be looking for that someplace. We did not find it. I had to buy a new one. I still shoot the same gun. It still shoots straight. Wild though. But yeah, muzzleloader was really cool because in fact, we found that there's less hunters in the woods during muzzleloader season, even than bow.
Yeah.
Than archery. And so, yeah, it was
for
good.
Washington. That's a good little hack. Colorado, it doesn't work that way because you got all the archery guys, and then they throw muzzleloader on top of the middle of archery season, so like doubles the number of hunters, which is a little crazy.
Yikes! Yeah. That's nuts.
But what else you got, man? Do you want to talk about our first archery hunt together, or you got some other stories you want to tell?
No, that's a great one. Yeah, I'd love to talk about that story. I mean, I'll start from like my perspective of it. So you had been out there, and you had been scouting, but I was up here, so I didn't get to go scouting with you. And you'd scouted out a spot.
Yeah.
And you'd chosen that spot for us. And it was me, you, and Jared. We're gonna hunt that year. And so I drove down from Seattle, drove my camper down there, and I pulled into the hunting spot. And you had already had your trailer. Set up, right?
Well, not my trailer. At that point, I still was rocking that camper, truck camper that Larry had.
Yeah, that's right. You had the same camper I did.
Yep. So I was in there. What's funny is it was one of those spots where the road splits 2 units, right? And it's over the counter, Colorado, so we could hunt either one of them. But I had put 100% of my scouting into the western unit, and we didn't step foot into that unit the entire time we hunted. Not once. And I'll let you tell them why. Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, it's such a funny story for why. It's like, I got there and it was evening. It was getting dark, and I hadn't seen anything. And you guys hadn't really walked in. I think you'd just gotten there the same day, right?
I was there. Jared wasn't even there yet.
Okay.
So I was there. I had some axis deer that I had gotten from Texas. So we had some steaks, but it was really late. And you had driven straight from Washington, which is what, like 18 hours, something like that?
Yeah.
So you were like, I'm going to go to bed. And you're like, we're not waking up at 3. I just need a good sleep so that I can be strong for the next week. And I was like, all right, cool. So we get up and I start making some tacos, and it's like it's early still, right? Like, if sunrise is 7:30, it's probably 8, something like that. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just standing there outside making breakfast tacos, and we're just sitting there chatting, like in sweatpants, like not doing anything. And we are looking east. Again, I put all of my efforts into the west, and you go, what are those elk? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because we can glass down this hillside onto this other mountain, and we just see 3 bulls hanging out there. And we're like, well, what the hell? Like, we didn't even think about stepping this direction, but there's 3 bulls probably about 1.25 miles away, just standing there. You can see them with the bare eye. You didn't even need binos.
Yeah, I remember it slightly different. I remember what we had decided that in the morning, instead of going west, we were just gonna sit and glass that hillside on the east. Just thinking as like, we don't know that area. Walking in there in the dark doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we'll hunt the morning hunt just glassing this side, and maybe when it gets light enough, we'll put on our stuff and walk in to the west. And we weren't expecting to see anything. There was just a great view from where we were. And I think we were just sitting there eating our tacos, or even maybe we hadn't even started eating them yet, but we started looking at that slope and seeing some movement with our bare eyes. And then we got our glasses out and we're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
That's elk. And one of them was a big bull. Yeah. I remember, right?
I remember all 3 of them being decent bulls. At the time, I didn't even know what a decent bull was, but I remember not thinking any of them were puny. So, yeah. But what I do remember is being like, all right, what are we going to do? Because we're both still in sweatpants. Like, we're not in our gear. We don't have anything ready to go. So we're like, all right, one of us stays here, keeps eyes on them. The other one goes and changes. And then we swapped so we could actually get ready to go charge down there and hunt them. So we just like sat there in our pajamas watching these elk while the other guy got ready, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, and we had a long, serious talk about how far it was that we were about to have to go. I mean, it was Like you could see them, but they were, and it was. I can't even remember the amount of elevation, but it was a good full mile just to get down to the bottom, and
About
then we had to
900
go
feet.
up.
Yeah, 900 feet down, 900 feet up. But it's not. It's about a mile for the first 900 feet down, and it's about a quarter mile for the next 900 feet up.
Yeah, yeah. So just this long slope down, and then a pretty steep slope up, and we hunted that every single day
Every
because we
day.
kept walking down there in the morning, and we would see more elk up there, and so we kept going up.
Yeah, man. And this was 2020, which was crazy because that day, you and I charged over there. Didn't see anything when we got over there, but we got a good lay of the land, kind of understood how we wanted to start to attack it the next day. And it was like 90 degrees. It was so damn hot. I don't know if you remember that.
Right.
And then Jared rolled in that night. And God, what happened? So he rolls in with his wife. His wife then takes off. He shows up with a box of candy bars and no other food. And I'm like, what the hell are you thinking, man?
That's right. Like a box of Snickers or something.
Yeah. But then the next day, we're sitting there glassing that same hillside, and we see that giant bear. Remember that?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So we see that giant bear, and you guys look at me, and neither of you have bear tags because you came from Washington, he came from Texas. You guys only had the over-the-counter elk tags, and I had both because I was a resident. And I was like, you look at me, and you guys go, well, if you want to chase a bear, let's go. Because it was a big bear. I think it was to this date the biggest black bear I've ever seen. Where again, same distance, 1.25 miles plus, and you can tell naked eye that it's a bear walking down this thing, and we know that he's walking the trail that we can get down to the bottom of. And so if he stayed on that trail, we're like, let's charge in there. So we charge down, right? Down around 900 feet down, a couple hundred feet up, because it's not all the way to the 900 feet up. But yeah, we charge up there. And I don't remember exactly what the plan was, but Jared, I think, had hurt himself already in the first walk. So we kind of leave him at the bottom of the hill. I go up to the left because that's where the path is, and I'm going to hide in a ditch off the path and just wait for the bear to walk by. That was our plan. You, though, are like, I'm going to go over here on this other hillside because it's a little bowl on the other side of the hill that we were glassing. So you're on the other side of that bowl. And I don't know if you remember this, but I get into there, and it's literally as soon as I get there and set up, I hear the bear. I can't see him, but I hear him through the brush. Like he peeled off the path right, probably within 50 yards of me. And I'm just like, I've never been so scared in my life. Like I've been hunting for 3-4 years at this point. I've got my bow. I have no gun. I didn't bring a pistol. I'm like, what am I doing right now? Why am I so close to the biggest bear I've ever seen in my life? And fortunately, he winded me and ran because I never had an opportunity, but I was so happy that he was gone. I was like, yes, I'm alive. Like that's all I could feel. So I crawl out of that ditch and I look at the other side of the bowl and I see you. And do you remember what I did? No. So I'm just like, I like get out of the bowl and then I jump or get out of the ditch and I dive back into it. And I try and wave to you and I'm doing antlers because there's an elk right above you. Like we're talking as the crow flies, it couldn't have been farther than 30 feet, but it was probably 40 feet up a pretty steep incline. And, 150 yards for me, but like, I mean, it had to be 30 yards from you, but like at an angle, you couldn't see it. So I'm like trying to wave you down, being like, there's an elk right next to you.
Yeah. If I remember right, I think I got your message and I was like sitting there hoping that he would just keep coming. Because I couldn't see him. Yeah. I never did actually get eyes on him, but I could hear him after you said that. And then, if I remember right, like we just waited. I kept waiting for him to come down and I could hear something moving up there, but he never came into view.
Yeah. It was weird because it was kind of a bowl with another bowl on the backside. And it was like just like a mound of trees. And he walked into that mound. Jared was at the bottom of it. I walked up and around it. And then we walked through it, and none of us ever saw that bull again. So, like, he was sneaky, but, like, it was too funny to come out of my little ditch and look at you and just have an elk standing basically next to you, just out of sight.
Yeah, and I'm just like, doo-doo-doo. Hope something comes out.
Yeah. Then I don't know. I think we hunted the rest of that day. I think Jared may have gone home because he was hurt. He didn't really hunt the rest of the trip. But fortunately for us, Jared was great at glassing, if you remember.
I feel like he stayed for most of the time. He just didn't go back over. Like he
stayed at camp and glassed.
Stay and glassed the slope for us.
Yeah,
the whole time we were back up in there.
Yep. And then the next day we had that blizzard, right? So we're talking September 5th. So like early, and it snowed a foot on us.
Yeah.
And we just
Yeah. It's a
sat,
big snow.
yeah, we just sat in the campers, drank beer, just like did nothing almost the entire day because it was whiteout conditions. That was the gnarliest snow I've ever seen in Colorado in September. It was crazy.
Yeah. I feel like at one point we did a drive down the road just to like see if we could see anything from the road because there's no way to go hiking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we had like a paper towel roll and we were bugling through the paper towel roll and stuff like that. Just wasting time, just being like, well, we can't really do anything. It's snowing too hard, too deep of snow.
Right.
But yeah, man, that was some crazy weather. I remember driving around and being like, God bless the fact that we have campers because every tent was collapsed that we drove by.
Yeah.
And there were just people sitting in their Subarus and in their cars just miserable, not going anywhere with their tents completely destroyed. That was a crazy season. What else is crazy is now that I've done this podcast, any Colorado hunter I've talked to and they want to tell me a story, it always involves the 2020 season when the snowstorm came in during archery season. They all have got a story about it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've probably
Yeah,
heard
we were
five or six, which is crazy to think about, but it was just that epic of a storm. So
Yeah. Yeah, and am I remembering this right? That year is when we had the whole herd of elk sitting up on that upper slope. It was like down the hill and even further than 900 feet up.
yeah.
And we left Jared back to watch, keep an eye on him for us, and he was like texting us as we went up there, and we tried to put a stalk on that herd.
Well, first, if you remember, we didn't see the herd at first. Jared spotted a single bull, and he was a nice bull. So you and I charged over. We're like, hey, he's got tracks. He'll bed down. We'll just follow tracks. So we get over there first thing in the morning. We're following his tracks. We're seeing bear tracks everywhere. We're just getting excited. And we followed his tracks for hours, basically until like lunchtime. And then we're walking and we run into an entirely different bull. And that bull stops and like I'm standing directly behind you. I don't know how far that bull was, but I think he spotted us before we spotted him and he was just standing there. And he was another great bull, like for over the counter, like great bull. And so we stand there and I don't even know if we did anything, but he buggered and ran off. And you were like, all right, let's follow his tracks. So we follow him for a little while until we fell into that aspen patch that was just gorgeous. And we just sat there, had lunch. And at this point, Jared's texting us being like, boys, I have a whole herd, like 40 elk bedded down. Here's the pin. And you're like, I want to chase that guy. And I'm like, you're in way better shape than me. So I was like, I don't want to chase anything. I want to go to the ones that are laying down. So eventually I convinced you, okay, we'll go back. And that's when we went to that herd of like 40 or 50 that was over there.
Yeah. And we were trying to put a stalk on them, having not even seen where they were. And I think on our hike over there, we got a few glimpses of where he was saying that they were. I mean, if I remember right, he sent us a picture of the mountain, and we'd all been glassing this whole hillside, so we knew where his picture was, and he had circled where the elk were.
Yep.
In the picture that he sent us. So when we were walking over there, we know how to get where the elk are, but we hadn't seen them yet, and so we're kind of about to put a stalk on a herd of elk that all we know is that Jared sees them and that they're there.
Yeah, that's true. And then our game plan. And I think I came up with this. And why did I come up with it? I have no idea. It just seemed like the right thing to do. But I was like, let's split up. They're not moving. Let's get to a position where if like one of us spooks them, they'll run to the other one. So I had you wait for like 20, 30 minutes on the other side of this little saddle while I dropped down the saddle and then up in the back side of that mountain. And I was kind of above them. And so I was coming in from above and behind. And then I was like, in 30 minutes, you leave. You go up to that same elevation that they're in and you come in side hill and I'll be behind them. And so I'm up on top of this mountain and it's like a sunny day after a big snow. So it is quiet. Like I can walk anywhere, do anything and nothing can hear me. And, but there's some pretty whipping wind and I see an antler and I'm like, oh boy, I might actually do this thing. Like I'm just freaking out. So I put my bag down. And it's probably 150 yards away, bedded, looking the opposite direction. And I just start walking slowly through the trees, trying to keep my eyes open, looking for other elk. I get closer. I probably get to about 50 yards, and I start noticing more elk. And I'm like, okay, I see a spike, like 3 cows, the raghorn, which I was like, I'm shooting that raghorn. I don't care. I'm gonna bust him. But I only saw like 4 or 5 elk, and but I'm in position. And granted, I'd never shot that far. I didn't have a sliding pin. I had like a 5-pin sight. So I had a 50 pin. I was going to hope that was going to work out for me. Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything. Oh, the bull was bedded with a log covering its entire body. So like I only saw its head, and that's why I didn't take a shot. So I was just standing there waiting, thinking, okay, eventually this thing will stand up. I just got to be patient. And I was like, how do I make sure that Steven is also being patient? And so what happened on your side?
I'm coming at them from a side angle, and I'm actually like I'm on the slope to where it's really hard for me to be out of sight of them because we're kind of on the same eye level. So I was almost crawling on the ground, if I
Yeah.
remember right. And I got to within about 50 yards, and I was behind this mound, and I was like, I need to like slide up this mound and get into a position where I can potentially take a shot, or even like just put eyes on to see which elk I can shoot. And in that process, they either winded me or heard me, one of the two.
Yeah.
At least that's the way I remember it. And then they all just got up and went in your direction. And all I did was hear them. I didn't even actually see them move off, but you got to see them, right?
Yeah. So I'm standing there waiting, and my bull stands up and looks in your direction. And the first thing I go is, I was like, shit, Steven. And then I was like, wait a minute. He's standing. Take a shot. So I get ready, and I get my arrow knocked, and I'm ready, and I'm about to pull back. And then all of a sudden, 30 elk stand up. Like, I only saw 4 or 5, but now all of a sudden there's 30 elk standing. I'm like, oh shit. And they immediately start running. And they don't run towards me. They kind of run, if you're thinking of like a clock, and if noon is straight ahead of me, I want to say that you're probably 9 to 10 on me, and I'm at 6. And then they probably ran to 3 o'clock. So like off away from both of us, amazingly, and to the right, even though they had no idea I was there. But they all herded up in this open space. And this is a rookie move that I made that I regret. But I was like, well, I'm here to shoot elk. This is the only elk that I've had an opportunity on. So I don't know what I'm doing. My arrow's knocked. I pull my bow back. I see my 60 pin, and I put it like above them and just fire an arrow blind. I was like, what did I? And as soon as I let go of that arrow, I was like, what the hell did I do that for? Like, that's so dumb. Fortunately, that arrow landed well in front of them. I don't know how far they were. They had to be like 100+ yards, and I was maybe firing at 70. Now I fired my arrow into a foot of snow, so I never found that arrow again. But yeah, they ran off, and we kind of followed their tracks for a little while, and then we went and sat on a log and just were so defeated because we had been high stepping through snow for like 8 hours at that point, because that was late afternoon that we ran into them. Yeah,
and I've learned so much about wind and why those elk chose that exact little knob that they were sitting on, because the wind swirls right there. And I've learned so much since then about what we should have done, which was like find a path out that they would like be walking into the wind, and just get on the side of that so that you don't go in there, because you're never going to get in there without them winding you. You got to wait for them to come out.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. I think I think I got lucky with my positioning. I think if you hadn't gotten winded, I didn't plan on doing anything, and I was just going to stand there. And 50 yards is well within my range at this point. Would I have shot at 50? No, but also I think they would have come back and over the mountain towards me, and I had good wind where I was. So I don't know. It's all hindsight, right? Hindsight's 20/20. But it was a really fun trip. Except the next day, I don't know if you remember that. We go back to camp, and the next day I realized I didn't wear a brimmed hat. I moved a beanie because it was snowing. And so I had no protection for my eyes. And so the sun coming down, the sun reflecting off the snow, I had burned my eyelids and my eyeballs. And like I couldn't open my eyes the next day.
Yeah, and I went up and hunted the last day by myself.
Yeah.
And I went all the way over there. And this is another crazy part of this story is I was bugling and I was getting returns, but one of them, the return that I was getting that was the closest one to me, sounded like some guy had a whistle and was just blowing it, trying to make it sound like an elk. It did not sound anything like an elk, and I'm just like, all right, buddy, whatever. And I was still kind of bugling and messing with him, but I was like, there's just some dude over there bugling at me. And so I sit down, I set my bow down. I think I even took my trigger off and opened up, and I had some tacos that I had taken with me from the night before. So I'm just like sitting there opened up my foil, unwrapped my tacos, and I'm sitting there eating my tacos. And I keep hearing this bugle, and it all of a sudden a humongous bull, like a great,
Yeah.
much bigger than the bull that I actually have killed, just comes walking in 30 yards away from me, broadside, stands there for about 30 seconds just staring at me. And I'm like in plain sight. So there's nothing I can do.
Just
My
holding
bow's
tacos.
5 feet away from me. So I'm just staring at him and he's staring at me. And then he just like slowly saunters off. And I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah.
If I would have known that that was a real bull, and that's another lesson that I've learned, like never underestimate, or never, if you hear a bugle, it could always be an elk. So always play it as if it's an elk. But if I would have just got behind the log that I was sitting on and had my bow ready, done deal, no problem.
Dead elk.
Yeah.
Well, the best lessons are self-taught, Stephen, right? Like you gotta mess up. For all the hunters out there, going out there and making mistakes, you'll learn a lot more than watching, YouTube videos or listening to podcasts. So go out there and make mistakes, because then you have great stories. You can come on my podcast and tell them.
Absolutely, man. And that, dude, I remember that hunt as being one of the funnest hunts. I mean, we didn't get an animal, but we saw so many good looking bulls. And it was just fun. We played a lot of cards, drank a lot of whiskey, just had an awesome time.
Yes, we did, man.
It's one of my favorite hunts.
It was, yeah, I think fondly of it too. And I always I love that I can give Jared shit. Like, he showed up hurt with a box of candy bars. Like,
Yeah, he only did one trip and then he didn't go over again, and we just did the rest of the hunting.
Yeah, but which worked out for us because he glassed up almost everything we went after. Like, he just has a great set of eyes on him. The guy's a terrible hunter, but he's got great eyeballs. He doesn't listen often enough that I can say that kind of stuff, and he won't give me too much shit. But okay, well, I know we have limited time because we got to get you to your snow goose hunt. Do you have any more stories you want to tell? I know your wife said something about some quails, 3 quails.
Well, this past elk season, we were in Idaho hunting elk, and it's a little bit of a story. We were there for 7 days, and I started hunting with my next door neighbor, like right next door. And we kind of started out. He has a wire-haired pointing griffon that is a great upland bird dog. And so we started, him and I. We've gone out on a couple of upland bird hunts, and then kind of became friends and started hunting together. And so he had drawn an Idaho bull tag, and we went over there, and he knew a guy that had guided hunts over there, and that guy had said, "Hey man, you can come over and stay in our area, and I'll show you a little bit around. I'm not going to guide you, but I'll show you, give you some places to go." And he did, and we had a great hunt. Again, it was one of those, we were there for 8 days actually, and we didn't even actually see an elk, but we had them bugling back at us. We know they were bulls because they were in areas where we couldn't get to them, and so no one else could have gotten there to be the bugler, right? So, and they were just really, really, they sounded like bulls, right?
Yeah.
So 8 days, but it was unseasonably warm. And they were bugling, but they just weren't moving. We couldn't get any elk to move at all, so we didn't actually put eyes on an elk. But while we were hunting, we were driving around with that the guide guy, and we saw some not quail. What are the birds that scare the shit out of us all the time when we're in the woods?
God, what are those things?
Grouse.
Damn sage grouse. Not sage grouse, but yeah, grouse.
Yeah, so there's 3 sage grouse in the middle of the road. And I'm sitting in the back seat. I've got my rifle. It's a 300 Win Mag. And the driver gets out, and he's the guide guy, and he's like, "Dude, I'm going to get one of these." So he gets his bow out, and he shoots one of them with his bow. And then he shoots a second time and misses. But he's like, he doesn't want to ruin all of his arrows. And so he comes around to me and he's like, "Hey dude, can I shoot one of those with your rifle?" And I'm like, "It's a 300 Win Mag. It's just going to explode." He's like, "Yeah, I don't care. Let me have it." So he grabs my rifle and shoots another one with a 300 Win Mag. And then I only had a few shells because I think I'd only brought 3 shells. He shot all 3 of them and only got one of them. And so there's one more bird over there. And so we go over there, and it's just sitting up in this tree, and it's not moving. So we just kind of start pitching rocks at it, and we're just trying to get it.
Throwing sticks and stuff. Rock. Yeah.
And we were all throwing rocks. And after maybe the 70th rock, the guide guy killed it with a rock. And so within like a 15-minute period, the guy killed a grouse with a bow, a rifle, and a rock. Which is pretty crazy.
Rock, paper, scissors right there, man. That's awesome. Here's a funny grouse story. So after I killed my moose this year, right? I shot her in the evening. The next morning we come in, chop her up. We're taking our first load out. So I've got like 80 plus pounds on my back, and we're walking out. I'm with a bunch of guys that no one has any tags. Like they were there to help me carry out my moose. So I'm the only one with my bow. We brought my bow just in case I didn't put her down the night before, which ended up not being an issue. But I got my bow. And we're walking out. Everyone's loaded up, and we see some grouse. And they're like, oh, put a stock on. So like rather than drop my pack, I just go on a stalk with 80 pounds of moose on my back. And I'm like trying to be sneaky, just like clumsily doing this with like 4 guys. Well, it might have been 3 guys. 3 guys watching me with their heavy packs. And like I'm just trying to sneak up on a bunch of grouse. It was the dumbest thing. What's funny is they completely disappeared. Like we had eyes on them the whole time. And then all of a sudden I get to where I want to be. And I'm like, where'd they go? And no one had a clue. So no grouse were harmed in my story, but it was funny to go on a stalk with that much weight on your back. You just do not feel sneaky at all. So,
yeah, no way to even be sneaky if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You're not light on your feet, that's for sure.
I'm not light on my feet without 80 pounds on my back. So put a moose quarter on my back, it doesn't help. Cool, man. Anything else you want to share? Otherwise, we'll wrap this up and get you to your snow goose hunt, brother.
Well, I can tell a little bit of a story about snow goose and
Let's do it.
How we kind of got into this idea that we're going hunting tomorrow. So while we were pheasant hunting on one of our trips, we were up on this kind of bluff looking over this little lake, and we look down there and we see like a herd, a flock of geese, and there's a bunch of white ones and a bunch of Canadians. So snow geese and Canadian geese all sitting on this lake.
Okay.
And it's maybe a half mile to get down there. And we're both looking as like, man, would be cool to get some geese. But there's almost a little chance that we're going to be able to make it down there and put a stock on these geese that are sitting on this lake, right? It's just like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But we decided, screw it. We're just going to do it. So we get our shells, the right kind of shells that we can shoot for waterfowl, non-toxics. And we walked down there, and my neighbor had some TSS shells in his bag. I did not. I only had like 4-shot and 3-shot that were non-toxic. And so we sneak down there. It's, we walk on this long way around to kind of get to the side of where we could walk in behind some trees and get to the beach. And then we get there, and he's holding his dog really close because he doesn't want her to spook him. And we're like staying down, and we sneak all the way up there, and they're still there, and they haven't noticed us. Or if they have, they're just not doing anything. And so all of a sudden, we just come running out from behind these trees, running out on the beach, just blah, 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 blah. And he knocked down 4 geese, and they all landed in the middle of the lake. And I shot every shell that I had. I shot, and I saw it hit birds and just ricochet off of them because my shot just wasn't strong enough. And there's maybe... They were maybe 40 yards, but that TSS took down 4 birds.
Yeah.
I think he even shot 3 shots and killed 4 birds. I'm almost 100% certain.
Damn.
But they all land in the lake, and we're like, holy shit, what do we do? And the dog is not a swimming dog. But somehow he convinced her. And what was so cool about where we shot him is they landed in maybe 6 or 8 inches of water. So she could walk all the way out there. And it's cool because now she's a water dog because she learned that she can walk out into water and get birds and bring them back. So that was really cool. We brought those home and we cooked them. And I have since learned that goose, when cooked right, is by far the best bird meat in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's almost like a red meat.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I've heard that. I haven't had much experience. I need to get after it more. Steven, did I tell you my story of what you gave me some decoys? And I went out and used them. Have I told you the 2 trips I took?
You got those decoys.
Yeah.
No, please tell the story. Someone was asking me if I have decoys, and I'm like, yeah, I think I sold them. Or
no, you sent them to me, man. I paid for shipping, and you gave them to me. But
awesome. I'm glad you have them.
Yeah, I don't have any duck hunting buddies, so I was just like, all right, Colorado Parks and Wildlife. They got this website. I'll reserve a spot, and I'll go do it. Right? Let's just go figure it out. So I reserved my first spot. I go out. I put them in the water on this reservoir is really low. So like the blind that it was built, the water's pretty far away, and I didn't feel too confident. Either way, I set them up. Nothing much happens from my first trip. The only thing that happened was I did shoot, what are those? They're not ducks, but they look like ducks. I can't remember what they're called.
Harlequin?
Huh?
Harlequin?
No, I can't remember what they're called. Either way, I shoot it and I walk over to it, and I have a buddy who's like a duck hunter, but he couldn't come. So I sent him a photo of this, and I'm like, shit, dude, I shot what I thought was a duck. It's not a duck. Am I in trouble? Is this like a bald eagle or something? And he was like, no. He's like, that's like a mud bird. There's millions of them. You unlimited limit. Just shoot as many as you want, but no one eats them. And so I was like, okay, good. I didn't kill a bald eagle. I'm happy that like I'm not going to go to jail. But lesson learned. So then the next time I go out and there's another spot and I just hear guys shooting there all morning my first time going out. So I book a spot 2 weeks later, go out to that exact spot that I heard those boys shooting. And this spot's a fair amount better because the blind is closer to the water. So I put up a bunch of the decoys and I sit there and birds are starting to come in and I actually shoot two. The flat-billed ducks. Again, I'm not an expert at this, but what are they just called flat-bills? What are those things called?
Yeah, beats me.
Yeah, right? So either way, I shoot two ducks, and I'm like, hell yeah. So I start walking out there. The problem is this reservoir, nice and gradual, but all that water's gone. It gets to a point where it drops, and those birds are out there. So I'm walking out there, and I realize I'm an inch from the top of my waders deep in this water, and it's snowing and cold as shit, and I'm like, well, what do I do? The ducks are still another like 20 yards. So I walk back, grab your decoy, because they've got, I'm guessing 20 yards worth of string on them. I don't know. So I grab them and I start flinging the decoys like I'm fishing with the decoys to bring the ducks in. And so I actually do hook one of the birds and I'm able to pull in the bird using the decoy on the line to get him to me. And I got the one and the other one was too far away. I couldn't fish that one out, but I was like, yes, I got a duck. I was super, super proud of it. I heard those are not, maybe it's diver duck. I think that's what it is with the flat bills. Either way, I hear they're a little gross too because they eat the bottom dwelling stuff, but ended up putting it in a bag, not doing a very good job, and it got freezer burned, and I ended up tossing it. So I need to get back after it because I've had some duck that was phenomenal and some goose that's been very good, but I need to be more proficient. Either way, thank you for the decoys. I have used them, and with no guidance, I have even seen some success.
yeah, duck hunting's hard, man. It's fun though. I'll tell just why I'm going hunting tomorrow. So we went out about a month after we shot those geese. We went on a guided Canada goose hunt, and we got our limit in Canada geese, and it was and we brought those back, and they're a little bit bigger than snow geese, and so we brought those back and cooked those up, and they're just as good. But this season right now is like the late season for snow geese. And so the limit for tomorrow is 20 geese per person. Whereas back during the season, it was 4.
Jeez.
You can't shoot Canada geese anymore, but you can shoot, it's just the late season snow geese. And so we're likely going to be sitting in a pit blind, which is a crazy experience to just like someone went out in the field and dug a fucking hole and, put some boards over it and you like drop the boards down and jump out and pow, 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 pow.
Yeah.
But yeah, so potentially, I mean, the thing about snow geese is when they're all in one flock, so they don't like spread around. They all land in the same field. And so if you can get them to come to your field, you're going to get your geese. But if they don't come to your field, they're kind of not gonna.
Yeah.
Is the way, you can go and bust them out of the one field and then they might move fields. But it's weird though, when you're hunting Canada, they come in 5 or 10 at a time and they land and you jump out and you can shoot them, where when the snow geese come in, there's going to be like 15,000 all come in.
That sounds amazing.
Try to get 20 of those suckers tomorrow.
Good luck, man. Good luck. I'm rooting for you.
Thanks, buddy.
Cool, man. Well, hey, last time I think I offered to let you share your socials and you said nah. So anything you want to share? You just want to walk off into the goose fields?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really use that much social media. I'm on LinkedIn under my name, but otherwise, I don't post that much on social. So
cool. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you, buddy. Let's connect and talk about September because we need to get back out in the woods. All right.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Thanks again for sharing some stories with me, brother. I appreciate it.
Man, of course. Later, bud.
All right, guys. That's it. another couple stories in the books. Again, I want to thank my good friend Steven for coming on the podcast, especially on short notice because I was looking for a podcast guest for this week. But thank you guys as well, you listeners, for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoy it. Check it out on YouTube. You can see my ugly mug if you don't know what I already look like. And then beyond that, guys, please, whatever you're listening to on right now, give us a follow, a share, maybe review us, and share us with one person. Help us grow the podcast. Thank you guys very much. Stephen, thank you to you again. Now, guys, get out there and make some stories of your own. Thank you.